So welcome, Matthew, our beloved, brilliant colleague. We so appreciate your consistent leadership. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging and giving thanks to our creator. We give thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Matthew, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work, sir?
Thanks so much, Victor. So my name is Matthew Mendelson. I live here in Toronto with my two sons and my wife and my little dog. And in my spare time, I do magic and I like to play baseball. And right now I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Social Capital Partners, which is an organization that Bill Young founded over 20 years ago that has really focused on kind of taking risks, making big bets, trying new things, supporting innovators of various kinds who are trying to expand economic opportunity, social inclusion, community well-being. We've invested in social enterprise and social impact work and community infrastructure, a variety of different things. And at the moment, we're focused on what some people refer to as the ownership agenda, how to expand opportunities for people to build wealth, own assets, own property, whether that's businesses or homes, or assets of various kinds, or community infrastructure, which can be collectively and shared community wealth, but that everyone can participate in as a public good. In my previous work, I've done all kinds of different things. I was a professor at Queen's for a while. I was a professor at U of T for a while. I was a professor at Toronto Metropolitan University for a while, mostly in public policy, political science. I've been a deputy minister in both the Ontario government and the federal government. And I ran a think tank called the Mowat Centre for 7 years, where we did applied public policy research on a variety of different social, political, economic issues. And I'd say my animating spirit over all of this time has been around economic, social, and democratic inclusion, and wrote a lot about and spoke a lot about democratic inclusion, democratic participation throughout different phases of my career, whether that was an academic or a researcher or in government.
That's incredible. That's incredible, sir. Your body of work is absolutely remarkable, and the authenticity you bring to your work is remarkable. So my next question is, what's inspiring you right now in your work? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
Well, I'm 5 weeks into a new job, so that always keeps you up at night a little bit as you kind of figure out, what you're trying to do and what impact you're trying to have and how you want to make the most of your time. I'm at a point in my career where, I'm privileged to be able to, choose work that I really want to do and that I'm committed to doing. So you want to make the most of that time, and you don't know whether that's 2 years or 6 years, however long that is. I really want to make sure I'm committed to that work. And at Social Capital Partners, the history of that organization has been to rethink the agenda every 5 years. And so we're in the process of rethinking our next focus, but we've already concluded that we want to focus on issues of wealth concentration, wealth inequality, the financialization of the economy, and how the economic model of current capitalism that we currently live under is creating enormous wealth, often through data and financial instruments of various kinds. And there appear to be more barriers to people without means finding a foothold and getting a chance to be stakeholders fully in our communities. So we're really focused on that. It's an extension of the work that we've done over the last few years on creating more opportunities for workers to own the businesses that they work for. But that's just one small piece of a broader ownership agenda. And this dialogue is taking place globally. lots of people are talking about alternative ownership models of various kinds, how we restructure capitalism so that it works for more people. And people use all kinds of different terms and they all have their baggage, but stakeholder capitalism or inclusive capitalism or community-based capitalism, and people will have reactions to each of these terms, and that's fine. But the problem that I'm really focused on at the moment is how we can shift some of our policies and economic framework approaches to acknowledge how the economy works, the wealth concentration that's ensuing, the challenges that a lot of younger people, particularly younger people without means, are facing, and how to make sure that Canadian dream that, is, sometimes a bit exaggerated, sometimes a bit mythological, is more laden with history than sometimes we talk about, but that remains a viable path for people. And the related problem that I'm quite concerned about is what severe inequality does to democratic stability, social cohesion, community well-being, health outcomes, social dysfunction, all of the bad things. And we can look around the world and see examples. And sometimes I think a lot of people look around the world and are a bit despondent about some of the forces that seem to be going on, from climate to authoritarianism. And we're not going to solve all those problems, easily. But each of us has choices to make about, the kind of work we want to do, or the kind of volunteering we want to do, or the kind of life we want to lead, or how we want to contribute to the community, kind of every day. And so I'm lucky to be able to, start to work on policy and program agenda around wealth concentration and democratic stability.
That's incredible. And I appreciate all the context. You have no idea. Our listeners and viewers, I think, were edified with all that. My next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking in terms of tactics to overcome these challenges and barriers?
So, I think the challenges, there are a couple that I would highlight. One is the challenges of conventional narratives and conventional thinking. There's always a long tail in how people understand the world, and that's fine. Human beings wake up every day and understand the world the way they understood it yesterday. But the reality is the kind of economic assumptions and orthodox approaches that people learned in the 80s and 90s, and current decision makers of a certain generation, the kinds of things they learned, the kinds of early experiences they had and were socialized with. I think it takes a long time for mindsets to change, and our mainstream narratives are dominated by quite conventional thinking and conventional assumptions about how the economy works and how society works. So I think for us, we're really interested in challenging those. We may not be right about everything. Sometimes there's a conventional wisdom that's perfectly right, and you test it and probe it, and it seems fine. But I do think that our public discourse in Canada is dominated by a very narrow range of views, and I think we need to take a critical look at how our current market economy is working and shaped, and it's gone through enormous transformation geopolitically. What's gone on, changes in the US, our closest partner and ally, but the digital transformation and tech capitalism and surveillance capitalism, and how money is made and how rents are collected and how financial institutions work and how private equity and fund managers decide where they're investing and how they're investing and what risk they take on. So all of those, are challenges. I think I was talking about our project the other day to someone, and they said, oh, well, the biggest challenge you face is that all the forces of global economic capitalism, wealth, and power are lined up against you. And I said, oh, yeah, that's all. That's no biggie. And, we're realistic about what we can do, but at Social Capital Partners, we want to do, what we can. And for me, in terms of strategies, those are strategies that, I return to regularly and have always returned to in my work. Some of that is about storytelling and building new narratives. Some of that is about getting data and understanding what's actually going on so you can inform those stories and make sense of the world for people. The other important element is building networks, building rich, dense networks of people who understand that something isn't working, but in their own day-to-day may not be empowered, either because of a lack of resources or time or networks to do something about it, but also may not have the language or the knowledge to integrate all of these various things that collide, and all of a sudden, one is faced with a series of consequences or challenges or issues that is overwhelming. So we're going to network build, we're going to collect data, we are going to build new narratives, and we're going to put ideas out there. The team at Social Capital Partners, the leadership team in any case, we're all in privileged positions where we're at places in our careers where we're not looking to what our next job is 6 months from now, and not looking for a promotion. So it's very, I find it very powerful as a very simple tactic to tell the truth. It may not be 100% right, but it's your truth, and tell the truth as you see it and as you've experienced it, based on your understanding of the world and data and relationships. And again, we are humble enough to say we're probably wrong sometimes, and we'll continue to get it wrong. But we have a great privilege and can use it as a strategy, which is that we're not compromised. We're not looking to secure a next deal. We're not looking to get funding. Social Capital Partners is independently funded. I'm sure a lot of the people who engage with your community, they're aware. I've got a grant with this organization. Even saw it recently. I'm not sure if people noticed the discussion about an alternative minimum tax, which is prominent, and the federal government is trying to move to increase the alternative minimum tax, which would be what wealthy people, the minimum percentage that they have to pay. And often they escape that by making large charitable donations. And they've got lots of charities kind of on the side of wealthy foundations and wealthy donors, and they probably feel conflicted. I'm not saying anyone's lying, but if you're relying on someone for your payday, it's sometimes a bit more difficult to be critical of them. So I think that's an important strategy that we can use, which is just kind of tell the truth as we see it, based on our experience, in kind of an uncompromised, fearless way, if we can.
I love that. I love that. Tell the truth and shame all those evils. So my next question is, how do you feel about the future of that ownership agenda? Employee ownership, asset building, community infrastructure. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you hopeful?
I'm super hopeful. It isn't as prominent here in Canada as it is in some other places that have, I'd say, deeper networks of think tanks and policy work that are looking at alternative ownership agenda, and alternative forms of capitalism, and really working with local governments to support uh, community land trusts and social procurement, and community benefits agreements. And I know your community and audience and network are very prominent and active in these areas. But my own view, you may agree or disagree, is that they could be more centered, that for mainstream political discussion. CBC is having a debate about economic policy. These issues are not front and center. These are on the side, and I would love them to be kind of centered. And that's certainly one of our goals, which is that there's incredible work and incredible ideas and incredible research and incredible initiatives and projects going on. And we need to center it more so that the ordinary bureaucrat at the Department of Finance is aware of these kinds of models. So when I was in the federal government, even stuff as long-standing as credit unions or co-ops was still kind of peripheral. It would still happen that we'd create a new grant or contribution program, and then you'd get a call 3 weeks later after it was announced from the co-ops or the credit union saying, "Did you really mean to forget us? Did you really mean that this was only available to private sector and not for profits? Because or just for the banks and not the credit unions?" So we just need, I think it's important to center this more and have people who can connect it to the economic policy discussions that take place, at departments of finance or in cabinet meetings. Because I don't think these, not because anyone has failed doing this, it's just that we are in the middle of a process, and I would love to see all of this become more prominent. And so I do think that in many places, these issues are becoming more centered, and we'd like to help with that. And the agenda around Indigenous ownership and Indigenous capital and Indigenous business formation is, kind of moving along fairly well, and you can see a lot more financial capital and financial expertise as First Nations take back ownership of assets and resources and land, and enjoy more benefits from the resources that they own. And so that's kind of moving along, I think, fairly well. But you can see it in the United States, where there's a lot of discussion of alternative forms of capitalism, the undemocratic concentration of wealth and economic power that has occurred. And so I think we're just getting going in this discussion. I think from my perspective, there's always this reality moves, and it takes a while for people, political narratives, media, bureaucracies to kind of catch up. And I think, we're seeing that with housing, for example. I mean, 10 years ago, you could see the housing crisis developing, but in governments, it wasn't a crisis yet. But people have been feeling it for years. I think, I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be, but at least people are now seized with it, and throwing all kinds of stuff at the wall and doing all kinds of different things. And we'll see which ones of these work, and they're not going to solve the housing crisis in the next 6 months, but people are seized with it. But it always takes longer than it should for people with power, for bureaucracies, for decision makers to kind of catch up to what's going on. But I think we're at the beginning of this discussion, because I think there's a broad recognition that the current system and model as constructed are not delivering on the promise that many of us expect. For we saw it recently in some new stats, with immigrants arriving to Canada and then choosing to leave afterwards because it's harder than it used to be to find a place to live and find a decent job that pays a living wage. So I think we're just at the beginning of conversation, and as long as people stay engaged and empowered, I'm hopeful, but the outcome is far from certain.
I think we don't have a choice. We're both fathers. So there's a Malawi proverb that I say all the time: the only thing more precious than your children is your children's children. And I think that we as fathers, we're forced to be optimists, because we don't have a choice. So my last question: do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
I mean, I guess I just pick up on your piece about children and grandchildren, or even further down the line. You know, it is, even if I feel good about the next 20 years for me, one can't be hopeful if one thinks that the next 60 or 80 or 150 years is not good for my kids and their kids. So I think all of us have that shared commitment to not just, you know, how we're doing today, but uh, our mental well-being is very tied to what we expect our kids and grandkids' mental well-being to be. And the call to action would be to just kind of put a pin in this discussion, in the sense that, you know, at Social Capital Partners, we are just embarking on this agenda. This is our new phase. And, you know, over the next couple of months, we'll be reaching out to people and talking to people and trying to build community and build networks and do research, and advocate for change of various kinds. And I just hope your network will engage with us if we ask you to help out with something.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the work of Bill, of John, your entire team, and we've always been supportive on all the initiatives that align directly with our values at Setsi. And as always at Setsi, we close by giving thanks and acknowledging our creator, the original stewards of the various lands we're on, all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Matthew, thank you so much for your leadership, your authenticity, your candor. And yeah, that's all that you do for so many. We really appreciate you, sir.
No, thank you, Victor. Thank you to you for everything you're doing. And I'm really enjoying catching up with your program and all your interviews.